does the reign of Jehoram of Judah compare to his father's reign? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 2 Chronicles on Walking Through the Bible.
The glory of his cross.
Today we're going to be discussing 2 Chronicles chapter 21, verses 1 to 11. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to 2 Chronicles chapter 21, verse 1. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 2 Chronicles chapter 21, beginning at verse 1. And Jehoshaphat rested with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. Then Jehoram his son reigned in his place. He had brothers, the sons of Jehoshaphat, Azariah, Jehiel, Zechariah, Azaryahu, Michael, and Shephatiah. All these were sons of Jehoshaphat, king of Israel. Their father gave them great gifts of silver and gold and precious things with fortified cities in Judah. But he gave the kingdom to Jehoram because he was the firstborn. Now when Jehoram was established over the kingdom of his father, he strengthened himself and killed all his brothers with the sword, and also others of the princes of Israel. Jehoram was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, just as the house of Ahab had done, for he had the daughter of Ahab as a wife, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Yet the Lord would not destroy the house of David because of the covenant that he had made with David, and since he had promised to give a lamp to him and to his sons forever. In his days, Edom revolted against Judah's authority, and made a king over themselves. So Jehoram went out with his officers and all his chariots with him. And he rose by night and attacked the Edomites who had surrounded him, and the captains of the chariots. Thus Edom has been in revolt against Judah's authority to this day. At that time Libnah revolted against his rule because he had forsaken the Lord God of his fathers. Moreover, he made high places in the mountains of Judah and caused the inhabitants of Jerusalem to commit harlotry and led Judah astray. We now have come to the end of the reign of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah. His reign over Judah was 25 years, so considerably less than his father's 41-year reign, but still placing him second in length of the 4 kings of Judah up to this time. His reign can be described as righteous because he kept Israel from going off into idolatry, though he couldn't always keep the high places from being erected. Now, of course, this didn't mean that Jehoshaphat was perfect, for he often allied himself with the king of Israel due to familial relations, and for this he was punished by God from time to time. But Jehoshaphat was a man of faith who repented and sought God's forgiveness when he failed, just as Christians should do today. With his death, the chronicler turns to discussing the reign of Jehoram his son. Now there are some things about this time period that we learn from 2 Kings that we need to make note of again. First of all, for the entirety of his sole reign in Judah, there is going to be a king in Israel also known as Jehoram, and so we're going to need to remember this in order not to be confused. The second thing we need to remember, as it will come to play later on in this chapter, the end of Jehoshaphat's reign brought with it something unique for Judah, but not for Israel at the time, which was a co-regency. Up until this time for Judah, a king didn't reign until his father was dead, with a minor exception of Solomon, who likely only reigned for a couple of weeks to months while his father was alive. However, from 1st and 2nd Kings, we learned that Jehoshaphat must have had a co-regency with his son Jehoram, and in fact, Jehoram began his sole reign even while Jehoshaphat was alive. How did we determine this? Well, 1 Kings 22 verse 42 tells us that Jehoshaphat's 25-year reign began in the 4th year of the reign of Ahab. This would bring Jehoshaphat's reign down to an ending of about 846 BC. However, scriptures also told us in places like 2 Kings 1 verse 17 and 2 Kings 3 verse 1 that Jehoram of Israel began his reign in the 2nd year of Jehoram of Judah and the 18th year of Jehoshaphat. This would tell us that Jehoram of Judah began his co-regency around the time that his father went to battle with Ahab against Ben-Hadad of Syria, and continued that co-regency from there on out until he began his sole reign in about 847 BC in the 5th year of Jehoram of Israel, according to 2 Kings 8, verse 16. In our study of 1st and 2nd Kings, we sort of had to cobble this conclusion together using the dates given to us in those books, as well as some of the language. However, from 2nd Chronicles, this conclusion can be drawn much easier from the language used, even though the dates are missing. Verse 1 says that Jehoshaphat has died, but instead of verse 2 laying out for us the beginning of Jehoram's reign, what it does is gives us the actions that Jehoshaphat took that led to Jehoram being selected king. First of all, we find that Jehoram had 6 other brothers, all who could theoretically have been king, because as we've seen before, the kingship in Judah was not strictly primogeniture. The king got to decide who would be king. This is how Solomon became king instead of Adonijah. Now, yes, from time to time we see God explicitly making the selection, but it is not always said that God selected the kings, and so we shouldn't automatically assume that he always did, though his providence guiding the matter on the whole shouldn't be called into question. Jehoram was the oldest son, and so he was a natural fit to become the next king, something that Jehoshaphat did choose. But in making this choice, he also ensured that his other sons were not left paupers, nor untaken care of, for he gave them great gifts of silver and gold along with the fortified cities in Judah in which to live. This truly meant that Jehoshaphat loved all his sons, but that Jehoram was going to be made king due to him being the oldest. It is the phrase in verse 4 that I would like us to focus on. Now when Jehoram was established over the kingdom. This phrase implies that his ascension to the throne wasn't immediate, or at least his sole rule wasn't immediate. This could happen because there is a contender to the throne, but the chapter doesn't imply that. Or it could happen because there is another king on the throne that you are co-ruling with. Using all the information available to us, the latter appears to be what is going on here, and therefore what we have is a 6-year co-regency with Jehoshaphat, and an 8-year period where Jehoram was sole ruler in Judah, one of those years being when his father was still alive. Realizing this could also have explained why Jehoshaphat had difficulty removing the high places at different points of his reign, which was because his son and daughter-in-law, Athaliah, Ahab's daughter, were idolaters and could have easily been aiding and abetting those who set them up, though that is pure speculation. What we do know is that once Jehoram was sole ruler of Judah, he killed all his brothers and also others of the princes of Israel. Why did Jehoram do this? Scriptures don't say, but it is not uncommon for a king to be paranoid against those who he sees as rivals to the throne, leading him to commit acts of murder. Herod the Great was known for this. However, there could also be something else going on here too. Remember, Jehoshaphat was a righteous king, while Jehoram was a wicked king. What of Jehoshaphat's other sons? Were they righteous or wicked? Again, the scriptures don't explicitly say, but I have a hard time believing that all of them would have been wicked, meaning that Jehoram could have been killing them and other princes in Judah due to their objections to Jehoram's idolatry. Such an idea is not so far-fetched because 1, verse 10 says that Libnah revolted against Jehoram because Jehoram had forsaken God and they weren't going to follow. So perhaps that's what happened with Jehoram's brothers too. And 2, Jehoram's brothers are going to be described as better than him later on down in the chapter, so perhaps that is how they were better than him, in that they were righteous. Regardless, killing them is going to have an effect of thinning the herd, as it were, of the royal family, actions that are going to have severe consequences after the reign of his son. And yet, in spite of it all, the Lord did not destroy the house of David. Why? Because of the covenant he made with David concerning the ultimate king that would come from his lineage, the Messiah. Thus, the house of David had to continue until that promise was fulfilled. But that didn't mean that Jehoram would go unpunished. During most of Jehoshaphat's reign, the Edomites had been brought back under full subjection again to Judah. However, it was at the end of Jehoshaphat's reign that they allied themselves with the Moabites and Ammonites in order to try and break free from Judah's rule. Chapter 20, though, details to us how their first attempt failed at the hand of God, but that didn't mean that the Edom would perpetually fail, for Edom failed there because Judah and its king were righteous. Judah and his king were no such thing by this time, and so God allowed Edom to break free. Now he didn't allow the Edomites to kill Jehoram, but he did allow them to humble Jehoram to the point that Jehoram couldn't exert power over Edom any longer, an ultimate fulfillment of Genesis 27, verse 40. And as we said earlier, along with Edom, Libnah revolted, though for very different reasons. Edom just simply wanted to be free, to free herself from the rule of the Judean king. Libnah wanted to be free in order that they could serve the Lord faithfully, for by this time Jehoram had made high places in the mountains of Judah, and even caused the inhabitants of Jerusalem to commit harlotry. Libnah wanted no part with that, and so they revolted against his rule. Now I thought Romans 13 said that we're to obey our governments and not to rebel, and that is true, as long as our government isn't forcing us to disobey God. Going off into idolatry is one of the worst forms of rebellion against God, because as long as one is an idolater, no forgiveness of sins can be had, for God will not hear those who try to serve him, plus other gods. Libnah couldn't be loyal to God and the king, for Jehoram was an especially wicked king. Therefore, their only option was to revolt. Just how bad was Jehoram, and what would God's final reaction to his rule be? We'll find that out, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 2 Chronicles chapter 21, verses 12 to 20, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.